Hi, my name is Grace Shalom Hopkins, and welcome to another episode of Spin Weekly. Yay! Today we are talking about how to spin two gradient bats together and still get a gradient or some other cool stuff like fractal. These two bats are by Spin Jones. I have left the names of their colorways with direct links to them down below, as well as a link to the unboxing that I did for these fibers. Uh-oh. Spin Jones is an incredible fiber artist out of the UK. I highly recommend you check her out if you don't immediately see these yarns and the spinning video and fall in love and just go propose fiber marriage to her. I would be surprised. I mean, that's essentially what I did. I was like, woman, let me take all your fiber. Let me keep your fiber awesomeness for myself. And no, I just want to share it with everybody because that's the fun of being a maker. I mean, honestly, I was going with it to be dramatic, but then there's no fun in keeping it all to yourself. You want to share with your friends. So that's what we're doing. We're sharing with our friends. All right, I am going to turn on some music and we will spin these as per usual. The in-depth voiceover for the Fractal is available for Patreon patrons. There is links to that down below. I will see you on the other side. Alright, so here we are. We're unboxing these bats. I'm gonna go and grab my list so I can tell exactly what's happening here. Because this is gradient three ways, I am splitting them into three separate piles. There are two piles are half a bat and then one whole bat. So 50 grams, 50 grams, and 100 grams because each of the bats is 100 grams. And I'm going to go ahead and repeat that with the other colorway. Alright, so for this one I am going to do my Rollag bat method. So I just took this drumstick and I rolled it around just like you would do if you were making a giant Rollag. You can do this without the stick, but I like the stick to keep things uniform. The trick here is not to roll too tightly. So I do recommend you read the entire recipe in my book Roving just to get a better idea of how it's done, but it's pretty straightforward. That helps to prevent the gradient from being disrupted. Well, here I'm doing a similar technique, only I've stacked the two bats, light to light and dark to dark, and I'm doing my best to keep them aligned, which was a little tricky. But I love this technique for a bat that you want to spin absolutely linear without having to worry about stripping or spinning across the top, because spinning across the top with the bat is really difficult. For this technique, I am doing a fractal, and so I'm going to go ahead and unroll the bats. And you can see how Spin Jones has actually rolled it in such a way where it's pretty easy just to spin it straight from the end, like before. Her prep, I guess, her rolling is very tight, the ends are very neat. It would be easy just to spin straight from it. But, you know, I wanted to demonstrate the technique. So I'm splitting them in half. One half is going to be our unprepped version. Like if you were spinning a fractal roving, you would want an unprepped version. So I'm going to set that aside here. I'm trying to make sure that I have two of similar length, so that way when I apply them, they're not going to be too imbalanced. Alright, so here I'm going to strip it down. I am looking more to strip in uniform width rather than across color fault lines. Because this is a very smooth gradient, I'm not too concerned. Now, this is a technique that I found that didn't work out too great. I probably would have just spun them one after the other, but I wanted to test out this gradient faux log thing. So I put the two strips together like you're seeing, and overlapped them ever so slightly, and then rolled them around my drumstick like a faux log. So that way I would start with, I believe, the blue and end with the green, and you'd have some gradient in the middle. However, because there was no Carter teeth to unify them, they just ended up being sort of tangled, and it wasn't very effective. So I would recommend either skipping that altogether or laying it out on a blending board. You can just comb it across a blending board very carefully, and that would have unified the two pieces together, so you would get a nice gradient. So I think my idea would work, I just executed it poorly. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to do that all the way down the batt, and these are my large uninterrupted pieces, like I was saying before. Because it is a gradient fractal, there is some interruption, I guess, for lack of a better term, but I didn't split them into teeny pieces, which you're going to see better what I mean here. So I went down and I split them into pieces, like I'm doing now. This is a complicated prep, so it's a little hard for me to explain it until you see it. I think as soon as you see it, you're going to understand what I mean. So I did that, and then I'm going to copy that same, again, trying to make them as uniform of strips as possible so we have even striping. That was the only part that you could get really scientific and weigh these out, but obviously that's not my jam, so I did not do that. So I'm matching lights to lights and darks to darks, so that way it's in always exactly the same order. So now here's what I was trying to explain. I'm going to split them into pieces and roll teeny versions of what we just did. So up there are big hunks of color, but here are smaller chunks, so that way as a fractal works, you know, you have full repeats of color within the main color stripe. Okay, so here we are in real time. If you understand how fractal works, you're going to understand what I'm trying to say, hopefully. But the key here is you need to make sure that you have the same number of mini piles every single strip. So here I have 6. That means that I need to have 6 for every single one of those colorways. So from light to dark, each one of those steps has to have 6. So that way it's a uniform self-striping gradient within those larger rollags that we just created. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Okay, so here we are spinning our batt that I rolled together. So there's 2 batts in there. And I just spin this end to end across the top. I'm making sure that I get bits of each fiber in every draft, but I'm not being super picky about it because I want it to be very organic. So I'm just going to turn on the music and let you enjoy this particular prep. so here we are with our gradient roll-lag bat. So it's just a gradient bat that I rolled into one big roll-lag. Beth from Blue Mountain Handcrafts calls those roll-logs. But again, I just spin it like one really large roll-lag. I would recommend pre-drafting. I didn't, just to see how difficult it was, and it was a little bumpy, but not that big of a deal. So I think it depends on your bat and its particular makeup. This is a really smooth bat. The fibers are really well in line. Spin Jones takes a huge amount of care to create masterpiece quality bats. So again, this is pretty self-explanatory. I just spun straight through it end to end. So I'm going to turn on the music and let you enjoy that spin. Okay, so because this is a combination gradient, I am going to go ahead and apply the green and the blue bats together, light to light, dark to dark, and that's going to give me that combination gradient without any crazy prep work, if I can get it to attach to my leader thread. Sometimes that's harder than it looks, especially when you have a human helping you out with your applying process. Okay, so once I get it on my leader thread, I ended up having to tie it. I'm just going to go ahead and apply this like usual. You can see that Baby Bean is helping me today. One of my favorite parts of plying is you really don't have to do much to ply you. You can hold on to your crazy baby and play with her and not mess up your spinning. So like before, I'm just going to turn on some music and let you enjoy the plying process. Okay, so here is our fractal. So I've begun with the larger hunks, and I'm starting with the darkest and moving my way to the lightest. So I just spin these end to end, and as I'm spinning, you're gonna begin to see some of the issues that I had with the gradient. Like here, we still have a lot of green left, like a lot of green, and the purple is trying to poke up in the center. This one actually isn't as bad as some of the other ones, but that purple would come up the middle and completely disrupt my, see there, I had to break it and pull it apart. See what I did there? Because I want a gradient. I don't want like a hunk of only purple in the middle of my green. That didn't work out quite so well for me. And as you watch me spin these, you can see kind of what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna pop back in when we're ready to spin the smaller pieces. Okay, so here is one of the small ones. I'm just spinning that one end to end. And so the way I set this up is I made sure that they were all in order, so from lightest to darkest, the full spectrum of the gradient, and that repeats 6 separate times, because remember, we split each of those sections into 6 smaller sections, so we have 6 total repeats of our gradient. So I don't spin them all willy-nilly. I do a very careful lightest to darkest in chronological order, 6 separate times. So I'm going to let you watch that, and I will hop into the play. Okay, so here I'm plying. I went ahead and just wound them off into balls because it was filling up my bobbin. So that is an easy way to ply from 2 separate bobbins. If you don't like the lazy Kate thing, that drives me nuts. I just wind them off into balls. So again, it's just our basic everyday plying. The larger pieces are dark to light, as well as the smaller pieces dark to light. So as long as you make sure that you've plied your yarns with both of them facing the correct direction, which is easy if you spin them end to end on the bobbin, like a center pole ball method. Okay, did you not just have like a puddle of drool under your face when you watched that? Like, hold up majestic. So let's talk about the combo drafted first, because I think that one's coming first. At least that's the first that I actually spun. I rolled the bats together, as you saw. It went pretty well. I think you could have just as easily stripped them, so put them on top of each other and stripped them in lines and spun them that way end to end. But I didn't have any complaints with this one. Just the usual when you're combo drafting, sometimes it's a fight to keep it consistent. But again, I didn't think it was overly difficult. I thought it was a really great way to make an in-play, or like I did, a single double gradient. I thought the gradients matched really well, and it was a success all the way around. So I will put close-ups of this yarn here. The next one that I spun IRL, again, depending on editing, is the Ply Together. This was super straightforward. I did my gradient batt technique, which you can find in my book Batt, like the full written instructions for both of them, and then I just plied them together. Again, really excellent. The difference between this and the other one, obviously other than the plied aspect, is the colorway. I feel like they're a lot more strong separates. So you can strongly see the difference between the two colorways, and they're clearly merled together. Whereas the combo drafted is definitely more of a homogeneous, organic, single uniform kind of a thing going on. Again, I will insert pictures and then pictures of the two together, so that way you can compare and contrast side by side. Lastly on my wheel was the Fractal Spin, and this was definitely the piece de resistance of this spin. I actually debated leaving this its own video, and the Patreon voiceover is a separate video. I had so much to say that Bean. The baby's been moving the camera around, so hopefully it's focused. Anyway, it's a big spin, and I thought it went really well. Some of the things that I would change are, I think I would do the rollags and the rollogs actually on a blending board, because with the faux log rolling that I did, I felt like I was fighting to keep the pieces together, and they whoa woman, what are you doing? She really wants to use the camera tripod as a walker. That's what we're fighting about right now. So I felt like the center was too hollow. The bottom colorway wanted to come up through the top, and it was just going to be way too heathered. Like, there wasn't a strong color A gradient, color B transition. It was just transition all the way through, and that's not what I was looking for. So I would recommend with an actual blending board. Also, I would recommend not letting your child think that the tripod is a walker, because you may never uncross that bridge. That bridge might just be there. It will haunt you forever. It will haunt you forever. Mwah. So, those are my thoughts. I thought it went really well. I am considering how I could create a mock-up of these samples, because I realized that it's going to be hard to fully grok how this works if you're not familiar with visualizing yarn. I will hopefully get back to you with something more consistent. One of the reasons I don't do swatches is because a lot of my colorways are really long game colorways. I can't just swatch a small square and be like, this is the colorway, because I've designed the colorway to stretch the entire skein of yarn. And this is a question and a complaint that I have been fielding since I wrote my first book, like years ago. But again, to reiterate, that's why I don't do that. But hopefully you will be seeing many of these yarns turned into woven projects next year early, when my mother is here. Alright, my human is melting down. The drama is mounting, so better sign off here. I really enjoyed this spin and this comparison, and I hope you will let me know which one was your favorite and how you would utilize them. Also, if you liked this video, hit the like button. And if you like these shenanigans, like my child causing problems over here in the fiber community world, trying to walk on tripods, hit the subscribe button, because that's what we do around here. Yeah, you. Also, as per usual, this is brought to you by our fabulous friends at the Patreon family. They make this boat float, and we love them. I will see you next time. Bye!